Welcome to Capital Intelligence. Today, we're going to act as your guide, your very enthusiastic guide, I should add, into the explosive rise and the hidden realities of buy now, pay later services. I mean, if you've shopped online literally anywhere recently, you've definitely seen those tempting little pay in 4 buttons sitting right there at checkout. But what is actually happening behind the scenes of this massive fintech boom? Let's find out. To do that, we're going to dive straight into a deeply researched January 2025 report from the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. And honestly, this report is an absolute goldmine. Why? Because for the very first time, researchers were actually able to match de-identified application data from the top lenders with real consumer credit records. So it finally gives us this totally unprecedented behind-the-curtain look at the real financial footprint of these services. We're going to use a sort of iceberg model for our explainer today. We'll start with those highly visible checkout buttons you see every day, and then we'll dive way beneath the surface to look at the hidden consumer data and the latest regulatory scrambles. Here is our roadmap. Section 1, the BNPL explosion. 2, the typical borrower profile. 3, the loan stacking phenomenon. 4, BNPL versus credit cards. And finally, Section 5, the regulatory response. Okay, Section 1, the BNPL explosion, massive market growth. Check out this key data point. By 2022, a full 21% of consumers with a credit record had financed at least one purchase using Buy Now, Pay Later. That is more than 1 in 5 adults. And what's crazy is roughly 20% of those borrowers were what the researchers are calling heavy users, meaning they were originating more than one loan on average every single month. And this beautifully illustrates the true micro nature of these loans. Look at this. The average transaction size is just $142. We're not talking about financing a new car or a big kitchen remodel here. These are everyday consumer purchases. It's exactly that frictionless, super easy nature of borrowing these small amounts that makes the whole thing so incredibly appealing. But the real secret sauce driving all this massive volume is the staggering 79% approval rate for applicants. That is a massive jump from just a 56% approval rate back in 2019. Lenders are practically opening the floodgates to both new and returning shoppers alike. And as we look at this chart, you can vividly see the massive demand spikes that happen during the holiday season. Look right there. Those absolute mountains on the graph, that's Black Friday. During these periods, daily applications surge well past 1 million, pushing the total gross merchandise value in 2022 to nearly $34 billion across the lenders they studied. Insane, right? Moving on to Section 2, the typical borrower profile. Who uses BNPL? Now we're dipping right below the surface of that iceberg, and the CFPB data reveals a completely unseen reality. Just look at this breakdown. A combined 61% of BNPL originations belong to borrowers with subprime or deep subprime credit scores. Getting specific, that's 45% deep subprime and 16% subprime. So what does this actually mean? Well, it means the vast majority of this market is fueled by consumers who typically face some pretty huge barriers in traditional credit markets. Now you're probably wondering, how on earth are lenders managing that kind of risk while approving nearly everyone? Well, they achieve this remarkably high 78% approval rate for subprime applicants through something called counteroffers. So instead of just flat out rejecting a risky application, the algorithm might say, hey, we need a down payment significantly higher than the standard 25%, or it might approve them for a much smaller credit amount. It's a really clever way to keep the transaction moving while still protecting the lender. Which brings us to Section 3, the loan stacking phenomenon, invisible debt. Going even deeper into this invisible debt, we need to talk about loan stacking. This is basically the practice of having 2 or more concurrent outstanding BNPL loans, often across totally different lenders. And here is exactly why regulators are sweating over this. Because these loans generally aren't reported to the nationwide credit bureaus, consumers can engage in loan stacking without lenders easily seeing the full picture of their debt load. To the traditional financial system, it's essentially invisible. And the numbers on this are wild. About 63% of borrowers originated multiple simultaneous loans during the year. But here's the part that's even more concerning for regulators. A full third of these users did so across multiple different firms. So they might have a Klarna loan, an Afterpay loan, and an Affirm loan all running at the exact same time, and each lender is completely blind to the others. So what's actually driving this rapid stacking behavior? Well, sometimes it can be fueled by what user experience researchers call dark patterns. Basically, these are manipulative digital design tactics built directly into banking and retail apps that actively exploit human psychology to encourage impulsive actions. We're talking about those aggressive UI manipulations. Things like inducing FOMO, the fear of missing out on exclusive interest rates, blasting you with Act Now messaging, or even disguising promotional loans as helpful personalized account tips. These tactics seamlessly push consumers right into making quick, stacked borrowing decisions directly at the point of sale. Section 4. BNPL versus credit cards. Financial footprint. So when the CFPB actually cross-referenced these BNPL records with broader credit profiles, they found that BNPL users carry significantly more debt across almost every unsecured category compared to non-users of the exact same age and credit profile. We're talking an extra $453 in personal loans, almost $900 more in credit card debt, and a massive $5,700 more in student loans. This really paints a picture of a consumer who is highly leveraged basically across the board. We also see a really stark contrast when it comes to credit card utilization rates. BNPL borrowers sit at a super high 60 to 66% utilization rate compared to just 34% for non-borrowers. And this huge difference supports a really fascinating theory from the researchers. They notice that a person's credit card utilization steadily goes up in the year right before their very first BNPL purchase. This strongly suggests that maxed out, shrinking credit limits might be exactly what's pushing people toward the paying for option at checkout in the first place. Yet paradoxically, and this is my favorite twist in the data, the default rate for buy now, pay later loans is a mere 2% among this group, compared to a 10% default rate on their credit cards. No way, right? How does that work? Well, largely because BNPL relies heavily on automatic, forced debit repayments, tied directly to a consumer's checking account or debit card. That structure ensures the digital lender gets paid first, long before that credit card bill even hits the mail. Finally, Section 5. The regulatory response. Watchdogs step in. Reaching the very bottom of our iceberg, we see that systemic watchdogs are definitely taking action across the country. The CFPB recently moved to classify BNPL digital user accounts as credit cards under Regulation Z, which aims to provide standard credit card protections. At the exact same time, states are jumping in. New York has drafted its own comprehensive framework, and the California Attorney General has been publicly demanding answers from the industry. But actually, scratch that, things are moving fast. To keep an absolutely objective view of the market, we have to note that the regulatory environment is super fluid right now. Very recently, the CFPB has contemplated rescinding that very same interpretive rule. Agency statements indicated they might shift their enforcement resources away from BNPL entirely to focus on other pressing financial threats facing servicemen, veterans, and taxpayers. So it's definitely a space to watch. As the lines between slick fintech innovation and systemic consumer debt just continue to blur, we're going to leave you with this final thought. These services offer undeniable convenience and frictionless access to goods, absolutely. But at what hidden cost to our long-term financial health? Will the sheer convenience of buy now permanently erode our capacity to pay later? Thank you so much for exploring the data with us today, and we'll see you in the next explainer.